Okay, good evening, everybody. Time is 6:30. I'll go ahead and open up the special city council meeting and call it to order. The Opens Meeting Act is on the back wall next to the agendas. Um, This time, we'll have roll call for the special city council meeting.
Six members present, two absent, Mayor.
Okay, item one this evening is a discussion on the capital improvement plan, the CIP. So I want to thank the council for being here. Thank you to staff as well for taking time on this Thursday night. We had presented this draft CIP at a previous council meeting, and it was discussed at that time by the council that I'd like to have a little more time to go over it and understand it. And so, again, agreed to have this meeting here tonight to, again, answer questions, go over the projects from both the city and the utility. Appreciate Jen Knabb Tuesday night giving us an overview of the budgeting process, going from our calendar to it was very, very well done and gave us a great overview. And so, again, this is the capital improvement plan is an important part of the budget. You look at, all the different projects from all the departments. And so I hope tonight, again, it's valuable for your time here to answer questions, to understand. We have staff here available to discuss it. So hope we take advantage of this opportunity to, again, learn and familiarize ourselves with the CIP. I will turn it over to Jody.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jody Sanders, City Administrator. Thanks for being here this evening and giving us the opportunity to go through the capital improvement plan with you a little bit more in detail or in depth. This is basically just kind of a high-level review of the major items. So I'm defining major items as single-year expenditures of greater than $2 million or multiple-year construction or major initiatives of the department. So if a department is undertaking something different or new, I've tried to include that as well to kind of point those items out. And then, the reminder, as you can see, that this is a draft of the capital improvement plan. Because we don't have final revenue numbers yet and reserve numbers for going into 2026, as we get those numbers, we'll be able to plug those in. So some of the funding sources may waffle a little bit. You might see some projects. I don't imagine that there'll be any projects that would be completely removed from the capital improvement plan, but they might be pushed out to later years because we just don't have the funds in the next 2-year budget cycle. I thought I'd go over a little bit more too about how the staff approaches the capital improvement plan. And on some of these, I feel like I'm speaking for Jeff as well with his team on the utility side. When I say things like staff is working on the capital improvement plan throughout the year as they're managing their department's operations and they execute the last capital improvement plan. I routinely throughout the year, I'm visiting with staff. We've ordered this, it's not going to be here by a particular date. Well, what are other things that we might be able to accomplish and that is in the next year's capital plan? Can we play shuffle a little bit if we've already obligated ourselves for this thing, but it's not here yet? So that happens throughout the year. And so it's as far as the capital improvement plan itself goes, it's really not, okay, we start in January. January is when we start putting it down into a form, if you will, for the next budget cycle. But I know I'm going to call out Nick Hansen. Whenever I talk to him, he has this kind of grungy already looking copy of his capital improvement plan that he's got all kinds of notes on because he lives his capital improvement plan. As part of this, when we sat down in January and we're ready to get started, I'm sure the folks reviewed and considered the action steps from the city's comprehensive plan that was passed in 2022, the long-range transportation plan that was passed in 2023, Parks Master Plan that was approved in 2024. Is that right, Nick? Maybe 5. And then the Creative District Strategic Plan, which was dated 2023. Those have action steps in like appendixes, the appendix areas of how might we implement those things that we spent some time with the public, gotten feedback from the public. What are you wanting to see, for example, in your parks? What are you expecting from the streets in terms of the long-range transportation plan? So when we do sit down in January, we begin with the previous year budgets, the previous budget cycle's capital improvement plan, noting projects that are completed, so they're going to kind of fall off. Those that we're still pending maybe or that we're working on currently, because we do have a column that says the year-end estimate. What have we spent of that project? And then those that might need revision as to current pricing, or this seemed like a thing that we needed to do right away in the next budget cycle, but no, this thing has a higher priority. And so each of the department heads sits down with their staff and talks through what their, the boots on the ground, what they've experienced. This street, it's not on any plan, but my goodness, we need to do something with it, and how will we approach it? Capital requests for shared services, that's predominantly the information systems department and the fleet maintenance department. Those two gentlemen really work with all of the departments in terms of replacement cycles and things like that. We've in the past had previous councils look and say, well, I see inspections is buying a new truck this year. Do they really need it? Well, that got pushed out so many years. If you have an opportunity to see Steve Kanasic, longtime Fremont employee, he can tell you that he is thrilled with his new Chevy Colorado pickup that he got this year, and it's the first time he's had a brand new vehicle to drive. But again, it's a Colorado. It's not a big, 4-wheel drive, dually, that kind of thing. And I credit, not exclusively, of course, but to a large extent, our fleet maintenance manager has really done a nice job to say, what does this job need? What can we, and where to find the good deals. He really has been able to approach what, I see some staff members nodding their head, what makes good sense, and what's the best deal we can get for our buck, instead of somebody that maybe their job is their gas superintendent. Well, do we really want them out visiting car lots asking about pricing? Probably not. So that was a hire, I think, in the last budget cycle that was well worth it. Turning to the general fund, where Jen has us starting there, and you'll forgive me, I got to put on my cheaters, because I shrunk this down a little bit to more quickly hit the items that I wanted to visit with you about. The very first item that's listed there is the archways that are scheduled to go at Main and Military, and then at 6th and Broad. And those are actually going to become part of that larger project that we've applied for that's called a streetscape project. So those archways would be incorporated into that, which is going from Military and Main north to 8th Street, down along the new police station that's being built, but then the perimeter of John C. Fremont Park, and then also on the other side of the street on 8th Street, and then going down Park Avenue. The idea is to make that a more cohesive look, and just bring that through all together. And we've applied for some federal funding to accommodate that. So, you can see some changes in some numbers there. But until we get a designer putting it together, we're not exactly sure what those dollar amounts will be, but we wanted to make sure that since it's an item that the BID has been asking for and has been in the capital improvement plan, that we're still working on it, but that's the status of it. On the fire side, the fire department, they've got a fair amount of money in their capital plan for things like ambulance replacement, fire engine replacement. And then we also have an additional fire engine that is budgeted to be coming in about the time we're finishing the new stations. The crowning achievement, of course, or the biggest expenditure that we have is the fire station, the 2 new fire stations. Again, we're purchasing land out at on the corner of Johnson and Military. When I say purchasing, we own more than half of it already, but the school district owns the other half. So we're purchasing out their share. And then that's where the satellite station will be. Then we'll be taking the existing station and tearing that down and rebuilding a brand new station at 16th and Main, or I'm sorry, 16th and C Street. Turning to the the police department, they too have initiatives for cruiser replacements, purchasing some unmarked vehicles. We are looking in the 2026 year. We're considering putting together a shooting range. We might have a location that we think might work well. And so you'll see we have some money set aside for land acquisition, and then also for the construction of the range itself. We have the Joint Law Enforcement Center, that groundbreaking is set for October. There'll be, I believe do we remember exactly how long the building project is for the police department? That's what I thought, 14 to 16 months for that. And as I said, with the groundbreaking in October. And they've set aside money for the furniture that goes in with that building, additional furniture. I'm sure there'll be some furniture that will be coming across. Moving down to animal control, we have an amount that we've set aside for, it's listed as Humane Society. It's the former Humane Society building. We are still working with architects to determine if it's going to be more feasible to strip down the building that's there and renovate it, or if we would be better served with, frankly, demolishing and starting it over. Because the space that's there, well-intentioned, it's not very functional for animal control. And so we're working through that with architects, but we wanted to get moving on that. And so we have an amount that's been set aside for that as well. Under the facilities, one of the things that I know they're pretty excited about right now, seemingly small and nowhere near $2 million, but they are replacing the doors on the front doors on the auditorium. It's a little bit more of an undertaking than one might think, but with two concepts in mind. One would be keyless entry, so that they can just give out codes instead of having to track down keys for people that are renting the auditorium, but also putting in handicap accessible doors. Right now, you have to ask somebody to open the door for you. We don't have the push button doors. When the renovations were put in, there was an emphasis on historical values, and so they were a little shy about changing out those doors. But we think we have a solution that doesn't destroy the look of the auditorium, but would still function that way. And then you'll see also that we have handicap accessible doors also going in at Christensen Field. And then we have it listed under facilities, that greenhouse that is out at, that is down by the Moeller Field, down where the Moo are playing right now. That greenhouse is going to move out to Christensen Field, so that it is closer to more of our parks facilities where we actually will be located. The parks shop that's down there will be vacated when they move to the new streets Parks and Fleet Maintenance Building out south of the water plant. There's a group that comes after that, and Jen, if it's these are the ones that are in insurance related. I think the first one is CF for Christensen Field. CF 3-horse arena stalls need a new roof. And then, there's several down underneath that, and you'll see that we are funding those with those roof replacements, and those kinds of things are from reserves. That's an example of the effect of the 2024 hailstorm. It was a 24 hailstorm, May 2024 hailstorm. We have the insurance proceeds, so those dollars are sitting in our reserves right now. So we're budgeting to spend those to make those repairs in the 2026 fiscal year. So I kind of wanted to group those together and point those out to you. This is not the only fund or department that has that. But if you're wondering why we're repairing what things that look like we're repairs, like new roofs, that kind of thing, and we're taking it out of reserves, that would be why, is we already have the insurance check. The next item, again, an amount much smaller than 2 million, but that I wanted to point out are, there's two different, maybe 3 lines. There are 3 lines that have generators on them: a generator at the auditorium, a generator at Christensen Field, and a generator at the Friendship Center. We have been working with JEO and have a potential grant, we're hopeful, that will pay for that. We'll be applying for a hazard mitigation grant to pay for, if not all, but some of these, so that, of course, Jeff will tell you the power's never going to go out again for the length of time that it did. But it really called into stark contrast for us that we didn't really have a city facility where we could offer any kind of assistance to folks, either a warm bed or, cooling, because if it happened in the middle of the summertime, if we had blackouts or something, we wouldn't have anything available. And so this is our effort to try and address those issues. We're looking at with the auditorium and Christensen Field, because we don't know what the hazard's going to be, whether it's a flood or a tornado or whatever. So we're looking to spread those out a little bit. The $1 million, or should I say $65 million question a lot of people have been asking is the field house, turf facility, parking, and landscaping. On several of the projects that you'll see under facilities, I would urge you to take a second, third, or fourth look at the Parks Master Plan. There are pages within it. First one is for John C. Fremont Park, and that is on page 76 of the plan. You will find where they had the JEO has shown us phases of these projects. And so if you, and the page for Johnson Park, I believe it's in the 80s, I believe it's page 83, but it's noted like phase 2A, the turf facility is listed for Johnson Park phase 2A. And if you look, it lists out what comprises that $65 million. Because the field house itself is not costing us likely $65 million. It's including a lazy river feature at Splash Station, which is right adjacent to that. There are a great number of park improvements, and really all that is, it's not, the Parks Department sitting in a vacuum coming up with great ideas. It's what the community said they wanted to see. And indoor soccer fields are something that people are passionate about, as well as outdoor soccer fields. And those Johnson Park improvements really highlight that request, as well as the lazy river feature for Splash Station, fruit orchard, and a number of other items. But for a full itemization, take out that Parks Master Plan. You can, if you don't have a copy, it is available on the city's website. Go to Park and Recreation. And it's, I believe, on the first page of Park and Recreation over to the left. That particular one says that it's being funded. Nope, that's other funds, sorry. No, other. So the 65 million, we're looking at it. It's going to take a village. Things like this don't happen like we did with the library. There was a bond issue. There was also a great deal of fundraising that went into the library, and then this council helped out at the tail end and brought in some more general fund reserves to help finish off that project. And the turf facility and those improvements will be much like that with some differences. We will very likely have to, well, I shouldn't say very likely, we will have to issue bonds. There's no way, we recognize that we could fundraise $65 million. The idea of this is a combination of both philanthropic folks within the community and the greater Fremont area that might be willing to help out for this initiative, but then also the bonds would be ones that we would pay back with a proposed half-cent sales tax. This is Jody speaking. This is not the council. We've talked about this individually, but I don't want anybody to think we're going to see this on the agenda next week where we're going to implement a half-cent sales tax. But the idea would be, when we get a better idea of what that bond number would be, to run it through models. We've done that once, and we have an idea of how much we could afford to bond if the city agreed to impose a half-cent sales tax. That would be a vote of the people. Without that piece, those improvements cannot happen at Johnson Park. So there's not something, I don't want anybody to feel like we're jamming something down somebody's throat and we're just not listening to anybody and just moving forward. That particular item will totally have to go to a vote of the people before we can go too far down the road. But in doing so, it will help, as we found out with the library, when the foundations that we might approach to ask for assistance, seeing that the citizens of Fremont are behind the project and have voted for an additional tax, we're feeling like that would really help talking to those foundations and those trusts that are available to us. So wanted to set that record straight as to where are we getting the money. It's not pie in the sky. We're thinking about it. We're very hopeful that we can get some momentum from the amphitheater that's currently being, I shouldn't say currently, because we were waiting until after this weekend to get started. But the amphitheater is underway. That if we are able to get that streetscape project also, the funding for that as well, that will give us some momentum going into and make folks really realize, hey, things are happening in the parks. Again, this is an initiative that the Parks Department has undertaken that you don't see, that obviously is much less than $2 million. But if you go through the parks budget, you'll find many places where parks are getting permanent restrooms installed at them. It is an expensive endeavor, but it's an amenity that many people feel is necessary at the parks to replace all of the porta potties and porta johns we have out at the parks right now. So there is the idea that we are moving forward with our parks, and I am very pleased with the work that Nick Hansen has done to kind of spruce up our parks and make them more enjoyable and have folks enjoy being out in the parks. Okay. So I strayed into the parks again, talked about the amphitheater, the streetscape that you'll see for the John C. Fremont Park. That is part of that funding that we're hoping to get from the federal government. And then there's a number of improvements as well. throughout John C. Fremont Park, including moving the splash pad and a new playground with rubber surfacing. And then we also have a small amount, just as kind of an FYI, we have a small amount for helping out Midland with the Hedem Field, the training, the roof on the, excuse me, that is actually, again, more of our insurance covered a roof at the training facility and memorial restrooms, and it's a roof replacement. I apologize. We have talked as part of, taking care of our facilities. We have visited with Midland about doing an assessment on the actual structure that's on the east side, the East Stadium, as people have expressed concern about what's going on there. If it's safe, it's very, because as you well know, it's a very old facility. And my understanding is that Midland's looking at that right now, and we'll be collaborating with them on some future funding for that as well. Turning to the street department, there are just a ton of projects that are over $2 million. I know that will surprise many of you not. I do want to point out the first couple of items, not in the street fund itself. If you move down, there's a subsection that's called street improvements. And I just wanted to briefly go over a couple of things with the annual pavement rehab. There's also one that has local asphalt overlays and local concrete replacement. Those are amounts that we're setting aside for you may not find the street that your neighbor's been complaining about listed separately because it's a small portion of a larger project. So we would be looking at that as part of the annual rehab, the concrete rehab or asphalt rehab, 1 or 2 block sections. And we have money set aside every year for that. So, if you have someone reach out and say, well, I've been complaining to the street department about my block for months or years or what have you, you can please feel free to reach out to Carrie or Brittany and ask if they have that on their list. But they maintain a list, and as we have funds available, and as you know, you increase the amount that's available for those rehab projects. We previously had done something like 250,000, and I believe we're up over at about 500,000 a year for that. So just wanted to point that out to you as well as you're visiting with constituents. We've also included something that's newer, and that, at least I feel that it is, we have annual signal updates. As you know, we've talked to you multiple times about various traffic signals in the city. They are many of them quite old, maybe not quite as old as I am, but pretty close. And so we are looking at getting those replaced simply because they're so old. Sometimes as is the case of 23rd and Summers, there's no way to get a hold of anybody that can fix it, or the parts are now obsolete. And, that's not a good place to be in. And so we're taking an initiative here to make sure that we get those updated so we can get replacement equipment as needed. The first item is the Broad Street rehab. That is coming out of reserves so that we can, because we've received the amount from the state. If we find that the amounts go over what the state has already provided, we are able to bill the state for the difference. Then we have the Broad Street Viaduct. That's the north one. The state took care of the south one, rehabbed it, and made sure it was in good working condition before they relinquished it to us. This is the north one out on more in the Sunset neighborhood out north. The 23rd Street signal repairs continue through this period. You'll also see the Fever Rails to Trails program, and that one continues on. That's a matching grant, taking the old Fever Railroad and turning it into a walking trail. The city was the local agency that requested that funding. That's why it's showing up in our records here. Let's see. Especially on the street projects, I can go through and read them to you if you'd like, but were there any that anybody had a particular question about of all of the projects? I mean, it's.
Do you want to finish up with the city side and then I can go to questions if anybody has some, or is that?
I wasn't
finishing
going to
it?
go through and read all of those. I just
Okay.
thought if somebody had a particular question about one, I could talk about it, but I didn't think it was in anybody's
Yeah.
best time to just
I
read
think
through
we
them
have
all.
one from Councilman Sukram, so go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, that 23rd Street rehab, concrete rehab.
Yes.
So are they gonna tear up the blacktop to fix the concrete? I'm trying to understand that. I'm trying to understand that project.
And I am not an engineer and don't play one on TV, so I'm going to ask Troy to. Okay.
Bushhaven City Engineer. I apologize, I
That's
didn't
all right.
catch the question.
That 23rd Street rehab, concrete rehab. So when they do that, are they tearing up the blacktop and then fixing the concrete and then?
So there's two of them on there, 23rd Street Rehab. If you take basically from Bell and you go east, that is existing concrete.
Okay,
And Bell, and as you go west, that's already been overlaid.
Yep.
What we want to do is keep concrete, and if they do anything west of Bell, that would be an overlay project. They would do asphalt. But the 23rd Rehab going east is still in pretty good shape. The idea there is we just replace a
I
panel or
wasn't
two as
sure which
needed.
way, if it was east or west, because if it's west, then that,
Rehab will be, or reconstruction will be, pavement will be concrete. Overlays are gonna be considered asphalt. So if it says overlay, it's an asphalt overlay. If it says a rehab or a reconstruct, it's concrete.
thank you.
Councilman Von Baron, you can get in the
No, it's
queue.
fine. Jody, I missed your point. I was wondering about the Broad Street coming out of reserves. You explained it and I just didn't hear all your explanation.
Sure. The state has already provided us with the amount that they estimated the repairs to be for Broad Street.
Okay,
Much like the insurance check is already
Right.
in our funds, that is in our funds. And if there are overruns, again, everybody knows that construction costs have gone up.
Okay.
We can bill them for the difference.
good,
Mhm.
good. The only other thing, I'm just, because it came up about the same time we were dealing with the runoff from up in Central Park. The South Claremore and Railroad project, we've had that in a couple of budgets, but that's not on this one. I know Steve is dealing with cancer and his wife and all, and like to understand where we are with that.
So we've talked internally as staff and, and analyzing, and I'm not doing the analyzing, by the way, but analyzing really the topography of the area. It actually is still on in the capital plan, but it is, let me see if I can find it. It's listed as a detention cell at Railroad and Claremore. When you look at the area, there with the gas line that's running down that, where one could possibly make a ditch, there's no way to dig any kind of detention there, other than, buying out the two landowners that are most impacted. We really don't have any other solution that is workable for both of them.
So we're gonna deal with it. And I don't remember all the conversations. We're gonna deal with it with the detention cell? Is that the primary
Well,
fix? I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to get my mind around.
right. The idea would be if there's very little that the city can do with that particular area. So a possible solution would be to acquire the land from the landowners and put in a detention cell there. Because the water naturally ponds there anyway.
So, and I'm sorry, that's under a detention item
A
that you
detention
referred
cell,
to?
can you get in, do you know what page that's? I've
Yeah, I
got
don't
it on
want to
page
take up a
7.
lot of your time.
It's on page 7 of if you, using the small page numbers on the actual capital improvement plan.
Okay. I will find it. Very good. I know Steve sent a text. I think he put out a camera, and 24-hour period, they had about 104 vehicles went by. So there's some significant traffic there. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilman Peterson. Yep.
Attention, but at some time back years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, I know Fremont now has their own stadium field, boom, done. And for some reason, I had it in my head that they kind of relinquished that property, Hedem Field, to Midland, hence the name Hedem Field and so forth. So for some reason, I was just thinking, once we walked away from that, we were done paying for things, but maybe not.
No, the property that is Hedem Field or Memorial Stadium.
Yes,
Which
yes.
is what we called it back in the
Correct.
day.
Yes,
That is still city property.
okay,
We retained ownership of that. They're currently in a lease agreement with the city, Midland is. And it's, yes, they're paying $1 lease, but they are paying for all the maintenance and.
like the turf and all that stuff.
Exactly.
But the structure itself, if it starts falling apart, which it looks like that may be happening, that would fall to us then as a,
No,
not
not
necessarily.
entirely,
okay.
but in, kind of the spirit of working and,
Yes.
and when the lease started, it was already, X number of years old
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time that the lease
Oh.
started,
It predates all of us. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
right? So I didn't feel comfortable saying, well, sucks to be you leased an old stadium, so.
Of course, it is only $1 a year.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
but even at $1 a year, they're,
I
they're
know.
still putting in significant investments into the property.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And ultimately, the dollar amount that's decided on comes from you as council. If there aren't any other questions related to that, I'll go ahead and move on and go down to the airport fund, Jen, if you would. And the entirety of this, I wanted to point out a few things with this. I've said this before, and I'm hopeful that you remember, but the airport pretty much just breaks even. They make a little bit of money, and that little bit of money is often used for the capital improvements that happen out there. Because many of the projects that we work with out there are 90-10, 80-20 splits with the state. FAA pays and it goes through the state process. But you'll see that there are items on the, particularly more in the out years, where basically we've at this moment said, we're going to take all of the airport reserves that are available to us, but there are still numbers that are that we don't have a source for, short of using general fund reserves, having a contribution from the general fund to support the airport. And so that's something that I wanted to make sure that you saw and understood, that without that support, these projects won't likely happen. And once you start telling the FAA, I'm sorry, we can't make the match, then they kind of put you further down on the list of communities that are available, that have funds available to them. So that's something for you all to be kind of thinking about. Feel free to reach out and visit with me about it, and visit with the mayor. But with this last project, I know that Jen had to do a little borrowing back and forth between the airport fund and the general fund for a while until we got the rest of our grant proceeds. So wanted to put that on your radar, and hope you pardon the pun that I'm talking about an airport and radar.
Well, usually, with the reconstruction of the runway, that was a $4 million or so project, if I remember.
Yes.
And a lot of those FAA grants are 90-10.
Yes,
They pay 90, we pay 10. I think that's a pretty good deal
yes.
for the city. So I think it's really worked well, and they're going through an airport layout plan right now, which will help us with the taxiway and other projects that need to get done out there. So I think we want to stay at the top of the FAA's list.
Moving on to the 911 fund. This one is kind of interesting because you'll notice the last 3 years columns are blank, because with the move to the new police station, they'll have basically all new equipment. So the other thing I wanted to point out about this particular page is that you'll see everything has multiple lines, and that's because for all of the purchases, there's a portion that comes out of funds that go straight into the 911 fund from the wireless tax that comes in, but then we split that. The remainder comes out of a split between the county and the city at a 50-50 split. And so you'll see how that plays out every year, or for each one of those items, rather. And that's all I had really to point out, talk about. Were there other questions that folks had related to the city capital improvement plan?
Questions from the council? Any more further discussion on the city before we move over to the utility side? Jody, I want to thank you for laying that out. Lot of important initiatives throughout all the departments. Look at public safety, to parks, to streets, you mentioned, all the different things happening in the city right now. And it's a lot, and it's exciting. And the part of the CIP is it's not all happening next year. I mean, you're looking at
Yes.
5 years right now. So, I really kind of, when I look through it, look at the first 2 years, because that's really what the budget cycle we're going in. But then it gives us all a good idea of what's in the out years, which helps department heads and helps us plan. And you also mentioned the comp plan and the park master plan and the long range transportation plan, all these plans and studies that have been done with public input, with a process. And then that is an important part of this too, is looking at all the work that's been done to gather input. So to me, it's a roadmap. And you didn't speak a lot about funding sources, but it's, if you go through it, you can tell what you have in there now as a draft. But the different buckets that projects are funded and how they're funded. I appreciate the work you do to manage that, because it's a lot of that is regulation and out of our control in a way. So,
and it's a team effort, going through. And we always, just kind of FYI to remind council, we always try and use the most restrictive funds first. So, for example, when we're looking at something for the police and fire, they have a revenue stream that comes in out of our sales tax that's specifically designated for the police and fire departments. And so as we're doing capital projects for them and that kind of thing, we use those dollars first and then supplement with general fund revenues to the extent needed. So that's kind of the mindset. With the, I guess I didn't touch on this, but I wanted to be clear that with the police department building and then moving on to the fire stations, obviously those are things that are, again, going to need to be bonded. We're anticipating that we'll likely, it's possible we would be issuing some bond anticipation notes for the police station to finish the police station, because we only had a certain amount set aside in reserves. And the price tag for that's coming in significantly more than that initial assessment that we had set aside of reserves. So a portion of the police station will have to be funded with, think of bond anticipation notes a little bit like a bridge loan when you're buying a new house and you still have the loan for the old house. So you borrow the money, but you don't have to start paying it back. You pay it back when you issue the actual bonds. And that would likely be municipal improvement bonds is the type of bond that we would use for that purpose, with the expectation that we would use the sales tax that goes specifically for police and fire. We'd be using the proceeds of that to pay back the bonds. So the funding for the police and fire stations, that's how that will work out.
And if we remember, the public approved the 1.5 cent sales tax just last May. And a portion of that, a third, goes directly to public safety. Correct. So, that is, was approved and in the plan. And so will be a big part of why we're able to afford these two facilities.
Absolutely.
So. Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Jody, you touched on a question that I was going to follow up on. So I was interested in funding. So we start with restricted funds first and then go to general funds if they're available, then to reserves and then to bonding. Is that kind of the sequence?
Yeah, we would definitely exhaust what reserves would be available and applicable for that, for whatever that particular function is. For example, we couldn't use gas tax reserves for the police department. Just that's a simple explanation. But we absolutely would. It doesn't make sense to hold on to more reserves than we're required to hold on to, and then bond. You don't have $1 million in your savings account and then go out and get a mortgage on your house. You pay the mortgage first, right. And we would be using that same approach.
Well, I think that probably helps answer the follow-up, because I was curious how we decide when to fund from reserves or when to bond an issue, but some of it depends on what sources of reserves are available. Is that the issue?
Yes.
Could you give me just you kind of gave me an example of that. Could you maybe just give me a general example of how that would work? A particular reserve fund?
Well,
for police, for example.
Only the portion of the sales tax that is specifically for that
Right.
Police and fire would be eligible for that, because the other, when our sales tax, each of our sales tax initiatives were passed,
Right.
they all had a very specific purpose that those things could be used for. And we really hold to that. Typically, those aren't ever down. If you get out your good old balance sheet from the audited financial statements, you'll see that only in the general fund and I believe maybe other funds will you find unrestricted reserves, because by their very nature, those like sales tax, streets, all of those kinds of funds are called restricted funds for a particular purpose, that you're only going to use them for that one purpose.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for this discussion on the city. I think it was very good overview about the plan for the CIP. Then I'd like to turn it over to the utility. You want to, Jeff, go ahead and,
Here, Jeff Shanahan, Utility Manager. We'll start with electric production. And first off, like to thank Jody for the explanation of it. We all operate our CIPs in a similar fashion. We all start at the same time. As she mentioned, this is a living and breathing document. We, if we burn up a loader engine today and we got to get a new loader, the rental is going to come out of operating and the new one's going to come out of capital, and things are going to get moved around, and we'll adjust the operating always in an attempt to make ends meet. So this is a budget to try to lay out projects and get them in an order that makes sense from a priority standpoint and puts them in years where we can afford them and kind of balances them out over time. So we'll start with electric production. And I looked at items that were similar, that were, 2 million or more for a single item, or even 2 million or more for a couple of years. So the ELG, the effluent limitation guidelines, that project's been ongoing. It's been approved by council. Right now, we're in the final stages of trying to get that thing installed. We plan on doing that this September, October, getting it commissioned in November sometime. So you'll see that project has a $2,600,000 payment at the end of the project, and that was an EPA requirement, and so we're getting that completed. The next item was the Unit 8 generator stator rewind. Unit 8 generator is the most critical asset that the City of Fremont owns. It's not only important for us, but it's important for the entire region for voltage support and reliability for the entire system. The windings have been in that generator since the unit was in service, so since 1978. We do testing on it, we inspect it, we treat it very well, but it's time to get it rewound. And so that project was approved. Both the generator and the ELG were going to be done last spring, but with 6's boiler tube failure, we couldn't take 8 offline with 6 offline at the same time. So we talked to the contractors and we moved them out into the fall outage. That means it hits the next fiscal year. That's our way I had to carry them over into this year. The next item that's of significance is the ash water transport pipes. Those are lines that go from our ash lagoon to the power plant, and from the power plant over to the ash lagoon. It transports bottom ash and surface water back to the plant. Those pipes have been in the ground since about 1980. Bottom ash is cause a lot of erosion on the pipeline. We have many leaks. It runs through the coal pile, has a lot of weight on it. So we're working to try to get those replaced. We've been looking at trying to figure out a route, goes across the ditch and all the way down across a couple sets of tracks. So it's an extensive project, but we're going to get on that done. The Unit 7's turbine overhaul, every 40,000 hours, we either inspect the generator or the turbine on Unit 8. So we roughly will take the turbine down in about 7 years and do a full inspection, and we cycle them so that we don't do them at the same time. So 2 years out, we'll do a generator. 3 or 4 years out, we'll do a turbine, and we just do it that way. On the smaller units, 6 and 7, we do both the turbine and the generator during the same cycle. They're small enough units, there's enough crane and lay down support that we can do those. Those are required, and we have to do those for insurance purposes too, and reliability. The other thing we have on here is the 50T emergency black start generator. That project is, we're looking at a generation study that council approved a while back. And part of that study is going to be able to determine what we need to install for generation. This would allow us to start the unit, for instance, during the blizzard. If we lose power to the whole town, we'd be able to black start the generator and get it online. The downside of it is you got to have transmission lines to get the power out of the generator. So during that event, we had some other issues that this wouldn't have helped us on. So we're we're in the process of upgrading our natural gas system. Once we do the natural gas system, that's going to tell us what we can do at the gas turbine. And that'll decide what size of generator we have to install at the gas turbine. And we may use some of this funding to help support the new generation going forward in another project. But for right now, it's listed as emergency black start item. And we have that out in the 27, but we'll be looking at that as we go forward. We've already touched on Unit 8 turbine overhaul, and that'll be happening in 27. Like I said, we do the generator this year, and then we'll do the turbine in 27, and then we start the process over again. Well, I'm sorry, 27 and 28. It'll cover the fall and the next season. So any questions on electric production? All right. We can go into electric distribution or transmission and distribution. One of the big ticket items is the OPPD, NPPD Fremont transformer replacement out at the substation to the west of substation D out by the country club. That transformer is on order. NPPD is doing the engineering and procurement. Fremont's paying for the capital investment of the transformer. OPPD is paying for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the transformer. And NPPD is doing the engineering and the interconnect. The substation G and E transformers, the balance of work, that's the project out at substation G, and that's putting in the switchgear and all that to get 13.8 out of that substation out there by the gas turbine. That'll help us be able to move load around a little bit to kind of spread it out on our system rather than having it so condensed at substation A. An item that really is kind of spread out through many departments and doesn't really hit 2 million though, but it's the AMI meter replacement. But that's a good project, and it's really going to help us with customer interaction and storm management. It's a very good project to be working on. I saw OPPD just announced today that they're going to do their customer interface, putting in smart meters and that on their system. That's similar to what we're doing here. We'll have to work on getting the customer interface portion. Right now, we're trying to build the backbone, get the system in place. But as we build on it, we'll just continue to grow and make our interaction with our customers that much better. Then there's the relocate the transmission line that runs between substation G and substation B. That was the one we received the $1.9 million grant from the Grid Resiliency Grant Program. We've had a ton of correspondence back and forth with the grant administrator and our team. And so as soon as we're working on it now and the folks are working on it, we get this substation commissioned out at substation G, then this will be the next project we get on and try to get that line moved as soon as we can. What this will do is remove the dual circuited line running down Luther and put a new line out by the highway. That way, no single event can cause us to lose 2/3 of our interconnect in the city of Fremont. So this is a project that's very important. It improves the reliability. Again, that's long overdue. We have substation transformers. There's a line item there. It's listed as $8.25 million. It's over many years. It basically is just an ongoing program. All of our transformers that have not been replaced in the last 4 or 5 years are on, they're probably 40 plus years old. We do DGA analysis. We check them. We check them for IR scans. But they are deteriorating over time, and we just need to be proactive in getting those replaced. So we're planning on at least one transformer per year. We had one at substation A where it's starting to overtemp when we loaded up. Came to council approved it. We're getting that. It's on order. It'll be here in another year, so we'll get that installed. Then we have down at the bottom, there's a substation addition and transmission line that would have to be relocated to feed that substation. Those are basically in there as if a project comes on into Fremont where we need to expand to another substation, we would have the resources in our budget to cover it. We have to have the appropriation, thank you, Jen, in order to buy it, even though it might be funded by somebody else. So we put it in the budget to have the appropriation for it, so that we have it there and we're ready for that. Any questions on transmission and distribution?
Jeff, can you just talk briefly, you mentioned it, the west side of town with the NPPD, the transformer and the benefit that brings.
Yep.
I think that's a huge deal for reliability with the system and access to the grid, and just, I
Yep.
think you could explain it.
Sure. Yeah. The way the SPP works is it runs in a contingency mode and a post-contingent mode. So, years ago, there was 2 sets of transformers out at the, NPPD substation. And they were a 45 MVA and a 30 MVA. So you got roughly about 70 MVA you could flow through there. Couple years ago, they took the old one out. It was 75, 80 years old. They didn't see a need for it. They took it out. Well, we see the impact of it because what happens is when Unit 8 is offline, our next most reliable resource is our Substation G or Substation B tie line. That's rated 100 MVA or 125. So what they say is if that's your normal operation now, because Unit 8's off, it can't come on. So now you got 100 MVA transformer sitting there for your interconnect. Post contingent, our next best line is 40. So now we can't load our system up more than 40 megawatts. So we have to have the gas turbine run, 6 and 7 run in order to meet the demands. This transformer out at D is a 100 MVA transformer along with the 40 that's out there. So now we'd be able to say post contingent, you've got 100 at the east side and 100 at the west side. We can load our system up to in that 80, 90, 100 MVA range once we get this transformer in. So in the event that we lose 8 on a day like today, we would still be able to import the energy through that transformer and still meet. We could always do it in real time. It's just the post contingent you'd be having issues with. So it is, it's extremely important to get that in, and the sooner the better. It improves the reliability tremendously.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Von Baron.
Jeff, I know that you're there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can come up to the table if you want me to.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
At one point, I think you updated us on that 20 megawatt RICE engine. I'm pretending like I know what I'm talking about, but is that for just anticipated internal use expansion? It's just seems like a lot of generating capacity. I was just curious on its basic use.
No, well, what would happen with any generation we put online? Right now, Fremont has a peak demand of, well, every year it changes, but our all-time peak demand is about 123 megawatts. Depending on what SPP does for accreditation, the whole network, it wants to have 36% margin in the winter and 18% margin in the summers. So every unit has a different rating than what the whole region has, but the overall impact SPP wants to see is the 18 and the 36%. So what we have to do is evaluate our loads and evaluate our generation and see what they're going to be accredited at. And then we have to have enough generation and accreditation to be able to cover the loads that we forecast. Right now, we have enough generation, but if we don't have, we don't know what 6 is going to get rated on. It's been off since January, just came online a couple weeks ago. We likely won't get 12 megawatts of accreditation or 16 megawatts of accreditation like we had in the past. So that's going to hurt us going forward. So we start adding housing developments, businesses expand. We need more generation to serve the load.
So it's kind of an on-off auxiliary switch. Is that kind of the way to think about it?
No, I mean,
Oh,
it's
I'm
a
sorry.
generating
Okay.
source. It's not going to be, I'm not sure what you meant by that, but it's we would run it during peak demands. It to be put in the market and the market dispatches it.
Very good.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
it isn't a, I mean, it's a real generator. I don't know whether we'll build a RICE engine. We're in the process of a study. A RICE engine is a reciprocating engine. It may be that we look at an aeroderivative, which would be a more of a combustion turbine. We're looking at all kinds of different options for what generation would make sense for Fremont for not only the short term, but what's it going to look like running out 20, 30 years from now. The type of fuel it's going to burn, whether it's dual fuel, those kind of things.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so we're done with production. The water department. All right, in the water department, the major projects that we're looking at right now is the well field and whether we can install a horizontal well or have to put in vertical wells. Council had approved us to go with Lane Christensen, I guess, to do the study of the aquifer and the impact the river has on it for groundwater and influence of groundwater. We got a lot of rain, so we really haven't had a low river season to be able to get that. We would love to have been able to have, real dry and have the river low so we can see that. Then in the spring, get a real high level and see what the impact is of high water. So we're kind of doing probably a high water right now and seeing what that looks like. And then we'll see when we get the low season, if we can get that in the fall, maybe, to determine what the testing looks like. But if everything tests out the way we anticipate it to be and the way Lane thinks it's going to be, that would be a horizontal well would be installed. It would probably pump somewhere on the order of about 10 to 13 million gallons a day peak capacity. Our system peaks out at about 15 to 17 million gallons a day. Our wells have been pumping water, some of them since the 1940s and 50s, pumping water every day to serve Fremont. And so we'd like to get some additional pumping capacity out there, let the other wells recharge, do some maintenance on them and do that. So it's an expensive project. It's $15 million, but it will basically be the water control and the water source for Fremont for many, many years to come. Once that well is installed, the next possible project that we would do would be water treatment and put it out at the well field. That would have some filtration in it, would help us with some of the manganese in the pipeline. It would also filter out some of the particulate that comes in there. And so that will be determined after the well's in and we get the analysis of that much water coming from that well. But we put them out in the years of 29 and 30. But I thought I would mention it because they kind of go hand in hand with the project. The lead service line, that's a requirement by the EPA that by 2034, we have all of our lead services out of the system. Keith Contour, the water superintendent, and his team have been collecting data, going through permits, getting all of the addresses that they know we have lead pipelines, looking at ones that are unknown. We're starting the process of investigating the unknowns. We anticipate the project's going to be about an $8 million project. What we're going to do is the state of Nebraska has gotten some federal money. They're offering a reimbursement of 60 to 70%, depends on the situation of what you have. And then the remaining 30% is a zero interest loan for nominally about 40 years. So we're working on that process, and we started out slow. We started out 360,000 in the first year and 720 in the next. And then we hopefully will get into a routine where we know what we're doing and try to knock out about $1 million worth of lines a year until we get them all knocked out.
Jeff, do you mind just mentioning the process and notification to the property owners and how that's going to flow and the timing, just because that might be something that.
Yeah. What we plan on doing is like right now, Broad Street is being overlaid. We knew we had a couple lines that were lead. We don't have the policy in place yet to do it, but we're replacing from the Broad Street main into the curb stop so that we don't have to dig Broad Street up after it just gets overlaid when we do the lines. So we're getting those done. But what'll happen in the future is we'll pick a block or 2 blocks and we'll put it out for bids for a contractor to install them. We'll notify the homeowners because we don't own the main service. So they're gonna have to give us a release to let us go in and replace their main lines. And then we'll turn it back over to them at new and they'll have the warranty from the contractor for the, whatever the contractor offers or whatever we say is 1 year or so. But we're gonna try to cluster them together so that we can take advantage of a contractor mobilizes in an area and we get that whole block or 2 blocks done at one time. Then we move to another area and just keep working through there. But we will be reaching out to all the homeowners. We've got it on our map right now for us to look at so we can try to strategize where to put them. But yeah, we'll notify every homeowner that's involved. And certainly if somebody has a question, they can certainly call the Department of Utilities, Water Department, and they can tell the folks the information that we have on their house. If it's unknown, it's unknown. But if we have a record of them, for sure, we can let them know what they have.
Thank you.
Right. Sewer plant was pretty good. Sewer plant didn't have any major projects. They've had $40 million in the last couple of years. So their projects, although they have some that, you know, exceed around $1 million or a couple $1 million, but what those are is those are ongoing improvements that we have through the 5-year process. There is odorant control, but it's way out. It's not in this budget cycle, so I didn't address that one. All right, let's look at natural gas. The natural gas system, really Fremont has 2 connections to the northern natural gas pipeline. In our system, they're called TBS-1 and TBS-1A. Town border, or it's a town stations connection. So what we're looking at doing is Fremont has a 26,000 MCF of gas capacity on the northern pipeline. We have a peak of about 22,000 MCF through our system. What we're going to try to do is upgrade our system to be able to transport that full volume through the Fremont system. It will help with pressure control. We're going to raise the pressure to 349 pounds rather than the 140 pounds. That'll allow us to put more gas in the pipe. It'll allow us to run the gas turbine without having to use a gas compressor. It helps pressure in the south side of town and in the older side of town by bringing up the pressure on the host system on the coldest days. What happens as flow increases, the pressure goes down. So on the coldest days, we start getting lower pressure. We're not in any kind of risk area, but we would like to have a little bit better pressure control in those coldest days. And so increasing this pipeline would significantly help that. So we're looking at going from TBS-1A to 32nd and Jaeger. And then the rest of the pipeline, we have manufacturing rating data on it. So we're gonna keep that system in place. Then the other item that's a major expense for the gas department is the peak shaving plant. We currently have a peak shaving plant down on, I don't know, like just south of Military on like Pierce Street. It's a propane air plant. We mix propane with air and inject it into the natural gas line. We can only inject about 40% of the flow can be propane air that flows through that border station. So when it was built, Fremont probably had a demand around 12 to 14,000 MCF, and it does 2,000. So you're in the 15, 17% range of protection on gas prices and scheduling imbalances. Now that we're at 22,000, we don't have near that percentage of coverage anymore. So we would like to install another propane air system into a different border station so that we can take advantage of the 40%, because you can't put one on the other border station, otherwise you can't run it. So we put one on the TBS-1A on its 58-pound line, and that'll allow us to shave some of that gas. So So that's one of the items we've got on our list. Any questions on gas? All right, then we have, and I'm just gonna lump these together as kind of shared services, I guess, the warehouse and the building here. The warehouse has a storage building. It's scheduled for 27. We're gonna look at what we have for once the fleet maintenance building goes online and seeing where we're at, but they've had on this budget for some time to build a building to hold some of the equipment, some additional wire, all the parts that we need for different for the different utility service groups that are all staged out of the warehouse. And then this building, we've budgeted some money for redoing customer service, first floor. We have right now, we're in the middle of a building assessment. The architects are evaluating the building and coming up with some ideas to maximize the space and to allow for future growth. We know information and technology, that group is constantly growing. Public Works, planning, they would like to grow. Finance is growing. GIS, we're going into the GIS world. We have to have a place to put the GIS technicians, all those folks, and we need space. And so we know we have a lot of space. We just have to maximize it. So basically we just allocated some money to each floor we used estimates based on what we've done on this floor from cost standpoint. So those are listed over the next 3 to 4 years going out to try to get this building done one floor at a time, just start staging people around. So that's what I have on the utilities and shared service budget. You happy to take any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your thorough review and knowledge of all the departments and projects going on. And it's very impressive. And thank you for your experience and your dedication to the utility. Really appreciate it. Okay, are there any additional comments from council on the CIP? If not, I'd open it up to the public. Any comments from the public?
Red Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank those that have facilitated this discussion tonight. They're always very informative. They're quite challenging. One of the observations I made at the end is I hope there's adequate preparation for when Jeff decides to retire. What a vast resource of knowledge he is. So anyway, with regards to the majority of what I have to say, it's going to be on the city side budget. And my goal tonight is to advocate and seek some fiscal responsibility in government spending. It's a very important component of setting the budget, obviously, as you know, and it spans several years at times, but it provides the opportunity for the mayor and the council to help the staff and to set goals and direction for the future. It shouldn't be a wish list, but rather a strategic plan. Having said that, I believe strongly in doing all that's possible to take into account the will of the people and to show prudence and fiscal responsibility in spending tax and ratepayer funds. So when determining the capital improvement plans, it's equally important to identify not only the items, but the proper priorities and the proper sequencing and timing of items that may be interdependent. So tonight I wanted to just address a few areas for your thought, and I appreciate the opportunity to set these forth. Public safety facilities, law enforcement and fire station, obviously those are high priority for the community. They've been voted on, but there is associated street work that should probably precede facility construction. Examples of that would be on Military and Luther. You don't really want to build a new fire station out on East Military and then shut down the access roads, which are Military and Luther, to do road construction after you've already done the fire station. So I think even though those are in the budget for being done, I appreciate that. The priority should be to focus on getting those streets prepared so that the fire station is functional, not dysfunctional once it's put in place. So I encourage you to look at the timing to make sure that those are in sync. As far as street rehab, that's been a high priority for the citizens of Fremont for years. And oftentimes projects are put out year after year after year and delayed and rehab doesn't occur. But I know from being on council before, and I'm sure you hear it all the time, street rehab is very important. They need to comport with the comprehensive plan also to eliminate unpaved streets in the city. That's one of the things that was discussed in that project. We have several across the city of Fremont that need attention. The South Claremore and Railroad project is one of those. That's been a project that's been ongoing for at least 7 years or more, approved in 2 prior budget cycles. Promises were made and promises have not been kept relative to putting in the necessary stormwater control and the street paving associated with that area of Fremont. I understand that there's a detention cell in the budget. That was not the main solution when this was promised and pledged through several administrations now in what was going to be accomplished in that area. Problems created by elevating structural components and the sports barn to the west of these properties all put their drainage in and created a problem that shouldn't have been there. Even though Fremont's flat, their problems got worse. It's much like what was discussed for Tech Park when we put Central Park in jeopardy with the water runoff from Tech Park, and we needed a solution and we got it ahead of time. These poor folks are looking for a solution after the fact. Always needs access from the road. Their garage faces what would be South Claremore, not Railroad. Everybody else uses Railroad. Traffic on that road is fairly significant and over 100 cars in a day. And so paving that road probably does make sense according to the comprehensive plan that has traffic. So I would encourage you to take a look more closely at whether or not that project is fully funded. It used to be around $1.1 million or $1.3 million, which included the paving and stormwater as well. Right now it's underfunded to do that. Overall, storm control and ARPA funding projects, I didn't hear a lot discussed, and storm water control is a major concern for the citizens of Fremont. A lot of people get flooded. We know it. It's an area that we know we need to work on. Oh, how unfortunate. Well, I have a few others on the list. Guess I won't get to them tonight given constraints. That's unfortunate. I'd hope to be able to cover a few more things. But I do hope that you think constituent input is important and necessary. And it's a key responsibility of this body that you make that happen. These kinds of meetings and comments are important to make sure that we get the people's voices heard. So I hope you give us more opportunities like this to have discussion and input. And thank you for the opportunity.
Any other comments from the public for this evening? Not seeing any. So I'd just like to thank the staff for putting this presentation together. I think the CIP really does, especially in the next 2 years, reflects the goals of the city and the comprehensive plan and the long-range transportation plan and other goals that we have. I can tell the work that's been put in. I know we're not done yet by any means, and this is going to come back for approval. But I see it and appreciate that, and we'll have plenty more budget meetings to come. So hopefully this night was beneficial for all that were here. So I would take a motion to adjourn or any final comments. Councilman Jensen?
If there's no further comments, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.